We can go ahead and get started. First, the DHS staff who are here today can introduce ourselves. I'll go first. My name is Cole Sorensen, and I work in the Disability Services Division as the E1MN coordinator. Part of my role is to be a point of contact for all of you when it comes to all things E1MN.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Howe. I'm the Employment First Lead here at DHS.
Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Gerby, and I am the Benefits Planning Coordinator here at DHS in Disability Services.
Hi, I'm Denise, and I'm the office support, and I'm just assisting with some technology and recording of the meeting.
We've been getting a lot of questions recently from both lead agencies and providers about pre-vocational services. Since over the past couple years, many of you are beginning to have people reach those time limits. In our meeting today, we're going to start by talking about the role of pre-vocational services, as well as reviewing how the time limits work. We'll talk about the role of subminimum wages as well, and their connection to competitive integrated employment. Then, we'll go through best practices around how to support a person as they approach the time limit on pre-vocational services. We have MTI here today, who will also share a little about how they can be a resource to lead agencies around this topic. Then we'll end the recording and have some time for questions and discussion. With that, I'll pass it to Beth.
All right. Thanks, Cole. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. We thought it'd be a good idea, first off, to just really get grounded in what pre-vocational services are and what it says in the CBSM, and to talk a little bit about just to make sure we're all on the same page. So the definition in the CBSM is listed here, and the link to the CBSM page is also in the in this slide. So just remembering that Pre-Voc is really to help people develop work skills and training and those services that advance people to competitive paid employment in the community. So they're really there to focus on strengthening people's work skills and making sure that they get to their work goals and get meaningful work experiences. So we wanted to set that stage and remind everybody what Pre-Voc really is. It's helping people advance toward competitive integrated employment. If you want to go to the next slide, please. And so in the CBSM also, we talk about the overview, how Pre-Voc teaches people essential work skills and strengthens their capacity to be able to work. And so as we have been answering questions and talking about this, even back in the day of day training rehabilitation, expecting that people who are in sheltered work in day training rehabilitation in that setting, people were there to learn work skills and to advance them to community employment. And we know that that hasn't always happened. That's not always what that looked like. There are a lot of people who have been in those settings for a long, long time. And so really just wanting to set the stage that employment is always the goal for people in Pre-Voc and in employment services. The goal is competitive integrated employment. And the services are there to really help them develop the necessary skills to be able to move to employment that lead to those greater opportunities for them to be able to advance in their employment goals. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. And so the eligibility section of the CBSM also just shows what a person needs to be able to qualify for or to have the right service for the person being pre-vocational services. They have to be eligible for a waiver, CAC, DD, or BI. They can also get it in an ICF DD. And they have to have pre-vocational services as an assessed need. So that's really what this is about, is determining what is the right service for the person is the right service Pre-Voc, or is it day services, or is it other employment services, or something else? So really keeping those things in mind. Next slide, please. Okay, so the covered services under Pre-Voc include that training and support that advance people toward paid competitive employment. It is to help them build their work experiences and their skills, making sure that they have those soft skills and those things that they need to be able to be employed successfully. So they teach and support things like following work instructions and those routines and schedules, making sure they have the work-related skills, communication and problem solving, building those relationships and things like that. Pre-Voc is really intended to provide the services that people need to get those work experiences, and the work-related education and training and development, and then transportation, and also the skills to be able to get to work and get back home safely. So that is what's covered under Pre-Voc. If you want to go to the next slide, please. And there are some things that are not covered, right? So anything, if it's covered by Voc Rehab, if that's the right service for the person, then that's where they need to go. And Pre-Voc should not be authorized for people who are able to get the services through vocational rehabilitation or state services for the blind. Also, people who are in school, if the service is a covered service under the IDEA, then they should be getting the service from that instead of Pre-Voc as well. So paying attention to that as well, like, are those services available from another source? And then training for a specific job. So if a person has a specific job, the training that they need for that job is not covered under Pre-Voc services. So Pre-Voc is more of the general work skills kind of training and support. And then also the new thing, and the thing we're going to talk most about today, is services beyond 3 years. So we know, I have worked with employment for people with disabilities for a very long time, and we have a lot of people who came out of the institutions back in the 80s. And it was a great service to be able to get them into, group homes and ICFDDs, and we created sheltered employment to help them have something to do during the day, and it was a need, and a lot of people are still there. And that was never the intent. The intent was not that somebody would go to the day training and rehabilitation facility or the sheltered work and stay there forever. The intent was that they would build work skills and go to what's next. And so this really is helping, and CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, really recognize that. And so the requirement that there's a 3-year limit on it came from the federal government. And so we implemented that, and like Cole said, now we're getting to some of those people are nearing the end or at the end of that 3 years. And now what? Now what do we do? So making sure we really keep that in mind, that Pre-Voc is intended to be short-term, the 3 years, with an additional 1 year for very specific circumstances. And it's important to note, it's for anybody who started Pre-Voc after January 11th of 2021. So if people were getting Pre-Voc services or DTNH before January 11th, 2021, this does not apply to them. They can continue in that service beyond the 3 years. And Christy will talk more about that.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yep. So this is pulled from the CDSM as well. Anyone who received Pre-Voc, either under Pre-Voc or in the DTNH before this date, can continue it with no time limit. And then the next slide talks about people who started on or after January 11th. So they are limited to 3 years, as Beth said. It's a federal requirement that Pre-Voc have a time limit, and it can be extended 1 year if the person needs more work skills training to resolve some skills deficits that could affect their employment in the community. There's a disruptive life event, or any physical or mental health condition that disrupts their Pre-Voc services. So those are the only 3 times it can be extended beyond that 3-year mark. We want to go to the next slide. So we wanted to talk about subminimum wages as well, and kind of clarify the role of it, how we can shift some mindsets and expectations. So as we've been talking about, Pre-Voc is a training service. It's not an employment service. And it's not a service to provide subminimum wages ongoing. Subminimum wage work is an option to learn a skill. It's not a long-term employment goal. This has been a hot topic the last few years. I'm seeing some things in the chat. We'll get to any of those questions at the end. We've got plenty of time for that. So I think this subminimum wages is, like I said, it's kind of a hot topic. It's been very political. And it's an area where we need to kind of shift those expectations and help people remember and understand that it's a tool to learn. It's not the long-term goal. So how can we do that? Next slide, please. So I think clarifying some of those expectations from the beginning is important, so everyone knows where they're going, what the limits are, and they can kind of plan for that change at 3 years. So these are just some like recommendations for best practices. It's not a definitive list, but discussing that purpose is to build skills for competitive integrated employment. Helpful to discuss what the goals are, what skills do they want to work on, what's their employment goal. Always good to talk about the time limits so people can be prepared that it's, a requirement that it is limited to 3 years, and there's an option to extend in circumstances. And I think discussing the role of subminimum wages, that it's to build skills, it's not ongoing employment. Next slide. So we're in year 2. Always helpful to confirm that there's progress in skill building. We want to make sure people are progressing towards their goals. Confirm that community competitive integrated employment is still the goal. They can go to employment at any point. They don't have to finish out Pre-Voc. They also don't have to go to Pre-Voc. So check in with them, see if they're ready. Discuss the time limit. They've got 2 more years. Next slide. Beginning of year 3, again, confirm progress in skill building, confirm employment's still the goal. Check and see if they're ready to move to an employment service. Reminder on the time limit, there's 1 year left. And then this is a great time to start talking about authorizing an employment service so the person's prepared when the time limit ends. This could be authorizing employment development plan so that they can have a job when the time limit ends. So whatever it is that person needs and wants. Next slide. The end of year 3, I think it's important to explain that they've reached the end of that time limit. Talk about their employment goals, what employment services can help. If they meet the qualifications for an extension, talk through that. And then discussing the wraparound services that are available to them. There's still, day services, employment services, IHS services, so they can have a full and fun day. Next slide. And then during year 4, it's same thing. Confirm skill building is happening. Confirm employment's still the goal. Discuss when they're ready to move to employment service. Discuss that time limit, and discuss authorizing an employment service so that no one's caught in the lurch when that timeline ends. Oh, and wraparound services. Should talk about those as well. Next slide. Oh, here we are, wraparound services at this point too. So end of year 4, they have reached the time limit. There is no longer an option to extend it. So let's talk about next steps, what their employment goal is, what employment services can help, and any wraparound services that they'd like to use. Next slide. Oh, previous slide. We've rolled through all of those pretty quickly. So kind of following what Beth said, we just want to clarify kind of what the role of Pre-Voc is, the role of subminimum wages, some ideas. We also have Andrea and Bob here from MTI, and they do they do a lot of technical assistance for lead agencies, among other things. And so I'm going to hand it over to them, and they can talk a little bit more about what type of support they can provide as you're going through this process, as you're working with people and providers to kind of go through the process. Andrea, I saw you here.
Thank you. Hi, Christy. Thank you. I'm here. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Zuber, and I am a consultant with the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, or MTI. And just as a reminder, MTI is a statewide training and technical assistance center, and our mission is to support people with disabilities our mission is to support providers and systems to help build capacity so that people with disabilities can move into integrated competitive employment. And so we do that by providing support for provider organizations and lead agencies statewide. We do direct training and technical assistance. We also have training and resources and other options available to do that across the state. So this is something we right now, MTI, Bob and I are working with 6 lead agencies across the state who have a grant to increase employment outcomes for people with disabilities, and then MTI provides the technical assistance. So we've been talking about this a lot with those 6 lead agencies. So we've got kind of a good handle on sort of what the questions and the issues are that lead agencies have with the whole pre-vocational services area. So one of the biggest things that we're hearing is that lead agencies right now don't have a good way to catch when the time limits are the milestones are coming. They don't have a good time, way to catch. It's year 1, it's year 2, it's year 3, it's now year 4, we're done. Part of the reason for that is because in most lead agencies, case managers authorize the services, and then case aides or account clerks are the ones who are actually entering it. And there's actually not a hard stop that doesn't allow you to stop entering services after year 4. There's a lot of warnings that pop up at those different years, but they can be overridden, and that's because of the people that are grandfathered in. We can't have a system that does a hard stop at 4 years. So the people who are entering those service agreements have got to be able to catch, like, oh, it's year 4. I need to circle back with the case manager and find out what's going on because this can't be authorized anymore. So that's like entering the service agreements, right? Back up, case managers have to have a way for them at their desk to be tracking and on it, right? And knowing, like, this is year 1, this is year 2. I need to have these different conversations at these different times. And just because this is so new and people are busy with day-to-day everything happening, there hasn't been a lot of work done yet in lead agencies to really build out like the processes to make sure that case managers and then other staff that are supporting them are tracking all of this and kind of staying on top of it. So MTI is working on creating some guidance and some tools and some resources that can really help lead agencies come up with a process to track that time limit, and then have those, and then we're coming up with tools for you guys to be able to give case managers to have those conversations. The slides that Christy just went through give you all of that. And what we've learned is that lead agencies, case managers sometimes just need something like at their desk, right? Like, what are the discussion points that I need to be able to go through when I'm having these conversations at year 1, year 2, year 3? So we can support with coming up with a process, helping lead agencies think through what would work. And every lead agency is different. So it's really hard to just say, do it this way. Across 87 counties, right? So we'll tailor it, we'll individualize it, we'll work with you to think through what would be the best way to track that in your lead agency. And then what would be some tools that we could support for case managers, which could definitely be more general, in order to have those conversations to help move people in the right direction. So those are, the other thing I think too is just for supervisors, because people are, then, and many of you on this call are supervisors, and we'll have staff coming in to your office or calling you the virtual office these days, and saying, what should I do? And so we also want to be able to make sure you're able to provide that really strong clinical supervision and guidance, and be able to support your staff as they're having to make these sometimes make these changes, move this in the direction that we're hoping to. And so the other thing that we would be able to help you think about is that the 6 lead agencies that we're working really closely with right now all have goals to increase service authorizations for employment exploration services and employment development plan services. And that's because those are those initial services that would eventually then lead to somebody moving on to looking for a job and moving into competitive integrated employment. So there's a focus on really working to get people to also choose, in addition to their pre-vocational services or their day support services, an employment service. And so this is an awesome opportunity, actually, to really start thinking about how do we start really using those 2 services to start moving people in this direction. And instead of it being sort of a, oh no, it's year 4, what do I do? Getting those services authorized early, especially employment exploration to begin with, right? So people can just start thinking about what employment would look like in their life and decide if that is something that they want to move on to. And then if they do decide that, moving into that plan phase to actually go get ready for a job search. So those are just tools that the state of Minnesota has that a lot of states don't have. And so we're so fortunate here, but we need to really start using those more. And I know one of the things too is, side note, MTI is really supporting those lead agencies to help build provider capacity to provide those services, because we're aware that that's an issue too. Bob, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple stories as a way to think about this. And I'll start with the personal, because I saw some questions there, some comments. This is in a context of we presume that everybody's capable. Okay, I'll give an example for myself. 21 and a half years ago, I suffered a spinal cord injury and a mild brain injury because my heart stopped a couple of times. The second month of my injury, I was still in sister training. And I met with 2 VRS counselors. I could only move my right arm. I told those 2 folks that I wanted to walk and I wanted to work. One was excited and said, we'll find a way. The other one said, I'm here to slow her down. Unfortunately, the person who was excited was promoted 2 months later. And I was stuck with the one who looked at my, inability to articulate at the time, inability to move my body, and presumed I was incapable. After a year of working with her and getting nowhere, I reached out to Chris. And she transferred me to another VRS counselor, and 6 weeks later, I was home working. He presumed that I could work. So there's a great video, and maybe we could send it to you guys later about it. It's just a 1-minute video, and it's a great video. But basically, the speaker said, there's 2 ways to be wrong about people. We can presume they're incapable, and we can be wrong, and they will not have any options to work in the future. Or we can presume that they're capable and then do everything possible to make that happen. And we might be wrong, but at least we tried. And that's kind of the context. Employment First presumes that people are capable, and then we do everything possible to make that happen. Also, here's the last story I'll tell you. 12 years ago, I was working at Ramsey County at the time, and I did a presentation on employment first to our advisory committee for the county. And on the advisory committee, there was a management staff person from one of the large DTH programs. And she told a story about they had a Ramsey County commissioner tour their place. He was newly elected. And he went through the last two rooms, and he left those two rooms. He said, surely nobody in those rooms can work. She said, so what do you think about that? And I said, well, I don't think about it so much as I feel sad. It kind of reminds you of how we looked at women and people of color for decades. We looked at their appearance and we presumed they weren't capable. And so it kind of makes me sad when we judge people by their appearance. And so, yes, we're going to have people that have been in programs for a decade because they grew up in a culture of soft bigotry and expectations. And we need to presume that they're capable and want to work. Research shows that 60% of people in those programs want to work. So that's kind of, to me, the way to think about it.
Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate you, because that's kind of where I was going to go next with the kind of support that MTI can provide, and that's a perfect example of it. So back to just the increasing service agreements, MTI can come help you think about strategies for that. We're working right now with several lead agencies who are working on that, and so that's just something that you could reach out to us and we could help with. The other stuff is the different, more soft skill stuff that we can support with. And Bob just gave you a perfect example of just supporting that employment first culture and helping lead agencies with some tools and some trainings that can really start moving them in the direction of really having an employment first culture. You guys heard the 6 lead agencies present at this meeting a couple of months ago. And I think all of them mentioned, like, wow, this has been a sea change with how our staff are thinking about this now. And so we can support that. We can support, help leaders think about how to support case managers to understand their role related to providing informed choice, related to benefits and work. And then, like I said, one of the other key things that MTI is doing right now through 4 lead agencies is helping them think about how to build that local capacity to provide employment services. One of the things that Bob sometimes says is that sometimes we've become aware that there are sometimes employment services deserts in Minnesota where there's literally no providers in a county providing those services. And one county, I'll just toot their horn a little bit, McLeod County, who has this grant, had 0 providers providing employment services at the beginning of this project, which has been 2 years now almost, and now they have 6. And it took some elbow grease and some support from MTI, but they went and recruited and found people willing to do it, and now they have are able to start getting through the proverbial waiting lists for people who want to get into services. So those are some examples of things that MTI can work with, and we also can customize and tailor. Maybe there's something I didn't mention today that you guys would love support with around this to think through. Go online, MTI, I'll put our website in the chat in a minute here. Fill out the technical assistance request form and just ask. We'll meet with you for a initial consultation, see what you're thinking, what your needs are, and see if we can tailor some support to you that way too. So, Christy, is that what you were hoping from me? Anything else? Okay.
Absolutely.
Let me add one more thing. I mean, your role is so important because if you believe it's possible that this person can work in the right circumstance and with the right support, it can happen. You might be wrong, but if you presume that they can't, it's never going to happen. You're so important to the whole process. So, I mean, I came home from my first day, coming back after 22 months. I lived in an institution for 22 months, a hospital, and then Curtis Center. I came home from that first day and I said, honey, I'm getting my life back. That's what it means to go back to work. Okay, either for the first time or returning to work. But you're so key. I just can't emphasize that enough. Your belief either makes a difference or gets in the way. So I hope you'll continue. It's so easy for us to look at some people said surely they're never going to be able to work like that Ramsey County Commissioner did. And I think that's a sad place to be.
Thanks, Andrea, Bob. So I think what we can do now is end the recording and then open it up for some questions. So Denise, are you able to stop the recording?